We're going to move on. We're going to skip chapter 5 in Griffiths, and we're going to move on to chapter 6, which discusses tense and aspect. Notice that we already talked about the lexical notion of aspect with regard to the four categorizations of Wendler's of state, activity, achievement, and accomplishment. Now we're looking at the grammatical notion of aspect as it interacts with tense. Let's me first start by giving you an example of the distinction between tense and aspect. If I said I watched TV last night, we have a past tense, and that past tense is inflected with that ed ending, and we can see that as a past tense. If I say I was watching TV last night, we also have a tense marker, and we use the verb to be. Was is indicating past tense. But we also have an element of aspect as grammatically indicated by the ing on the main verb. That is, it makes it into a participle. So in I was watching, we have a mixture of both past tense and the progressive aspect. What's the difference between I watched TV and I was watching TV? Well, one indication, of course, is that there's a sense of completion about the use of the simple past tense, and with the use of the progressive aspect and the past tense, there's a sense that maybe it wasn't complete and maybe it was interrupted. I was watching TV when something happened. So if we look at some of the definitions of tense and aspect, we can begin to say that tense is deictic, that is, it takes its particular tense marking with respect of the time of utterance. It locates events in relation to the time of utterance. So we can say, I'm going to the game tomorrow. In a sense, we don't really have a tense marker here, but we use going to indicate future action. And we know that the point of utterance is now, such that tomorrow is the future. He said he's going to the game tomorrow. Notice that we've reporting what was said, but what was said still can be understood as referring to the next day or tomorrow. And then he said he was going to the game the day after. Now we're suggesting the actual time of utterance is after what was said and is also after the time of the game. So that is, in a sense, the way we talk about tense being deictic. It is related to the time of utterance. Aspect, on the other hand, as we've seen, is about the time profile of events, and we talk about three different aspects. We've already talked about the progressive, okay, and the progressive aspect, the ing ending, tends to give a particular contour of an event as something which is ongoing. We're not focusing on the ending or completion of it. Second aspect that we use in English is the perfect aspect, and this suggests the notion that we are in the aftermath of the event. That is, the aftermath could be in terms of time, just afterwards, or it could be in terms of its effect. We're still feeling the effects of it. In other words, there's a close connection between that particular time, that particular aspect, and the event and the impact of the event on how we feel now. And then we have what's called a simple aspect. And when we use the simple aspect, it can refer to particular discrete events. Okay, I watch TV. That could be a one-off thing, or it could be an habitual action or states. Okay, when I lived in Ireland, I watched TV a lot. Okay, here's a poem. You may know this poem. Child on Top of a Greenhouse, Theodore Rothko. Um, does it have tense? Does it have aspect? The wind billowing out of the seat of my breeches, my feet crackling splinters of glass and dried putty, the half-grown chrysanthemums staring up like accusers, up through the street glass, flashing with sunlight. A few white clouds all rushing eastward, a line of elms plunging and tossing like horses, and everyone pointing up and staring. Does it have tense? No, there is no tense in this. Does it have aspect? Yes, it has masses of progressive aspect. Notice how the progressive aspect and the lack of tense freezes this particular scene. It's something that's ongoing, never ending, like a memory, maybe an embarrassing memory that keeps coming back to you. Okay, it's never finished, it's always ongoing. What we can do, of course, is we can reformulate this particular poem with tense. I put it in the form of a dialogue here. What was it like up there? Okay, the wind was billowing out of the seat of my breeches. So now was is the tense marker. Now it has tense. My feet were crackling splinters of glass and dried putty. What could you see below you? I could, and now we're using could as a past tense marker. I could see the half-grown chrysanthemums staring up like accusers up through the street glass, flashing with sunlight. What could you see above you? There were a few white clouds all rushing eastward. There was a line of elms plunging and tossing like horses. What about the people on the ground? Everyone was pointing up and staring. So now we've reformulated with both tense and aspect. Okay, so we've got tense in these particular examples as the past and the aspect is the progressive. The wind was billowing out of the seat of my breeches. Everyone was pointing up and staring. Or we can have another example where with the tense is still the past, but we're using the simple aspect. The wind billowed out of the seat of my breeches. Everyone pointed up and stared, which makes them into more or less discrete actions. Here's an example of the notion of the perfect aspect. And remember, this is to do with the aftermath. Events in the past are very real, very pressing for the point of utterance, the time of utterance. And here's an example. An example which is painful for me. It's England's defeat by Brazil in the World Cup. This is going back to 2002. And that's a picture of the English goalkeeper, David Seaman. And he made a terrible mistake from a free kick by the Brazilian player, Ronaldinho. Here's a part of a newspaper report after the game in which David Seaman is quoted. And this is what he said. That's just life as a goalkeeper, Seaman began. I just feel so, I just want to say sorry to the people I've let down today. That's just the way it goes. Sympathetically, he was told he could not blame himself for the debate. Well, it's not true. It was his mistake. I can, he replied. Yeah, he knows. Now, here's the crucial part. It's a free kick. that's from quite a way out. Notice the use of the present tense makes it very immediate. The poor guy's living this over in his head. All right, maybe he's still living it in his head now. Maybe the aftermath is still there with poor David Seaman in 2013. I was expecting a cross, switches into the past tense. And I'm sure he meant a cross, okay? And so meant is in the past. Now, here's the crucial part. He's mishit it. He has. So it's perfect aspect. He's mishit it. I have misread it. Perfect aspect. And it's a goal. Okay? Crucial here. Choice of the present perfect is giving a particular aspect to what David Seaman is saying, which suggests that he's talking about a past event which still has ramifications now. It's still incredibly psychologically real in his head. And so we're talking about the aftermath of a past event. You can actually click on that link and see the particular goal. It's not particularly, it's YouTube, but it's not very good, particularly good recording. Okay, now, overwhelmingly, we can put tense and aspect together, and we can also put it together with lexical aspect too. So we can say that we talk about tense in English. We can only really talk about past tense. We usually make a distinction between past and non-past, and then with the non-past, we can break it down into present and future. Notice the future tense in English is made up of various choices, which actually don't contain tense marking in the sense of future, as many languages do. So you can have a look at the different examples of simple aspect, progressive aspect, perfect, and then just to make it a little bit more complicated, you can combine progressive and perfect together. So here's the one where we can begin to combine lexical aspect of verbs and the grammatical aspect. And here is the first notion of simple aspect as it relates to habituality. It can either refer to a repeated or habitual event or a single event. Okay, and to make it into the simple aspect referring to habituality, you can add on these particular phrases. So for the past, in those days; for the present, nowadays; and for the future, in future. So we can look at state verbs. She loved music in those days. Makes it habitual. Activity, he drank Turkish coffee in those days, habitual. Accomplishment, Sweepy brushed his teeth by himself, okay, in those days, and then that makes that habitual. An achievement, the clown popped the balloon in those days, okay, so that was his responsibility, her responsibility as part of that particular circus act. And then you can look at present simple, and you can add on nowadays. She loves music nowadays. He drinks Turkish coffee nowadays. Sweet Pea brushes his teeth by himself nowadays. The clown pops the balloon nowadays. So those are all habitual. And then similarly with future, she will love music in future. So it's a projection or prediction of a future habitual activity or state. He will drink Turkish coffee in the future. Sweet Pea will brush his teeth by himself in the future when he gets older or when she gets older. The clown will pop the balloon in future. Okay, it's going to be the clown's responsibility. So that's the notion of how the simple aspect can either be understood as a discrete or single event or a repeated or habitual event. If we look at the progressive aspect, as we've said before, this downplays the onset and ignores the end of an event and focuses on its middle phase. And it's presenting it as an ongoing activity. Progressive really has three main meanings which may not be present at the same time, or some of them could be present, some not. So A, the happening has duration, okay? So it tends to extend the duration of the particular action, okay? I was drinking coffee seems to give it greater duration than I drank coffee if we think of a particular single event. Also, the happening has limited duration, okay? It limits it in the sense that it's not habitual. We can see that it's likely to be part of something which is interrupted, okay? I was sleeping when something happened, okay? Which limits the actual event of sleeping because there's an interruption to it. And a third meaning of the progressive aspect is the fact that the happening is not necessarily complete. And so if you take A and B, okay, duration and limited duration, it gives a sense of temporariness or provisionality. Notice how progressive aspect can interact with certain achievement verbs. Have a look at these sentences and notice how our to is kind of weird. Notice how this is all based upon our understanding of how the world works rather than the verbs themselves. So, hurry, the bus is leaving. It may be the go bus to Columbus, or it's leaving when maybe the driver gets in and starts the bus and people standing on the sidewalk all start getting on, or etc., etc. And similarly for 3, hurry, the movie is starting. We know that movies take a couple of minutes to start, i.e. they have credits at the beginning, which often you can miss. But the notion that hurry, the car is starting is a little weird. You'd have to perhaps go back in time to the days when cars were cranked by hand and somebody would try and crank it so it turned the engine over and it spluttered. Oh, yeah, it's catching. But that doesn't seem to happen now. Hopefully it doesn't, not with my car. Hopefully it doesn't happen with your car. So notice how the progressive there can give some duration and how it interacts with those particular achievement verbs, which are not normally used with the progressive. But notice how they do capture an element of real life experience. We can only understand these sentences through their direct reference to some real event and real experience. Mentioned before the notion of temporariness and provisionality. Here's the one captured here in this sentence. The key is lying at the bottom of the swimming pool. Presumably, it's not something, we don't keep our keys on the bottom of a swimming pool. You know, where do you keep your keys? The keys lie on the bottom of the swimming pool. Weird. Presumably, based upon our knowledge of swimming pools and keys, this is not a permanent state, it's a temporary state, okay? You're being stupid. Notice there's a huge difference between you're being stupid and you are stupid. You are stupid is a state, you're being stupid at this moment, okay? I know you're not stupid, but you're just being stupid now in this temporary situation. The raccoons are eating the catfish. I don't know if raccoons eat catfish. as a habit, but for some reason the raccoons have got into the special pool in which we're raising farm-fed catfish and are eating them. And we're eating oatmeal for dinner. Maybe because we can't afford anything else, but or it's not something that we're gonna eat every evening for dinner. So it has a certain temporary state. So again, that illustrates the interaction of progressive aspect and certain stative verbs. We could also look at tense and aspect in terms of entailment. So if you take a sentence like the waiter folded a napkin, what it entails is the napkin was folded. And the waiter has folded the napkin also entails the napkin was folded. Okay. Notice with that second one, the choice of the perfect aspect is because we want to express some element of the aftermath, the effect of the aftermath. It may be something which is new to the person who's being informed. Is everything ready for dinner? Yeah, the waiters folded the napkins, the tables have been set, etc. But if we take a sentence like the waiter was folding the napkin, which is a combination of past tense and progressive, what we know is that this provides a sense of a lack of completion. So it does not entail the napkin was folded. The waiter was folding the napkin when something happened, and we have no idea whether that actual action was completed or not. Okay, so therefore it does not entail the napkin was folded. Let's just have one little return trip visit to the perfect aspect. This is the last slide. Again, we talked about the aftermath. The event continues to have consequences. Okay. Look at that picture. That person's really, really enjoying the rain. And so that person is certainly enjoying the consequences of the rain. Maybe it's not rained for a long time. Maybe it's been really, really hot. And people are just desperate for it to rain to clear the air. So, hey, come on, the rain started. The rain has started. Let's go outside and enjoy it. So we are in the aftermath of a switch from not raining to raining. Okay, so what we've done in this particular chapter, we've looked at the notion of tense, we've looked at the notion of aspect, and we've looked at the interaction between the two, and we've also looked at some of this notion of grammatical aspect and how that interacts with lexical aspect.